Hello, everyone. How are you guys doing today? My name is Shannon Gilmore, and it is October 4th, 2022. Oh my goodness. Welcome to this Facebook Bible study. As normally we do random Bible studies, but today I was doing a little Bible study of my own. I was just doing some Bible study and just being open to what God wants us to all learn. And I heard the sentiment that I've heard before, and I've always ignored it because I don't like feel good messages. And I don't like how, excuse me, it's getting my tea. I don't like how we've been fed feel good messages with not an understanding behind it, or there's a misunderstanding that leads us kind of to the where we need to go, but not quite. So God had me hear this. If God brings you to it, he'll bring you through it. Excuse me. Just don't want to be clearing my throat all the way through this, because this is important, as every Bible study is. If you guys have comments, questions, or suggestions, please make a comment. So with that said, thank you for joining me today, and let's get to it. Now, when we hear, if God brings you to it, he'll bring you through it. There's also a Bible reference that comes with that sentiment, and that is through Moses. And so I just want to get us acquainted with Moses just a little bit, because as I started writing this out, writing a script for a professional video, I was getting a lot of things. And so that's why I wanted to do this, because I like the format of how we do this Bible study on Facebook, where God just shares scripture and we're just, bam, there it is. Bam, there's the understanding. And then we go on to the next verse, and then bam, and more understanding. And that's what was happening. And I'm excited to share this with you. So thank you for joining. And I want to read from Exodus, where the situation is Moses killed the Egyptian. And the reason why he did that was because the Egyptian guard was beating a Hebrew. Now, we all know that Moses was Hebrew, but he was adopted and raised as an Egyptian. And in the book of Hebrews, it says that Moses was trained and educated in all the ways of the Egyptian magical arts. So the point being is, Moses was raised in the magical arts, the woo, the witchery, witchcraft, sorcery of Egyptian idolatry. So he was well educated in the Egyptian way. Now, scripture also says that Moses had somewhat of a foundation, as he was allowed to be nursed by his mother. So when the child is being nursed by their mother, they are getting DNA, they are getting nutrients from the mother's body to the child's body. So there is a spiritual connection, as I've said this before, and I'm going in detail with this, okay, guys? This is for us to know. No longer are we we cannot survive on the milk of the word anymore. We have to gnaw our teeth on the meat of the word. And if you're not ready, it's time to get ready, because the milk of the word from the churches, from pastors, it has not helped us. Now it's time. We're mature enough, or we should be. As Paul says, you guys are still drinking of the milk of the word when you should be cutting your teeth on the meat of the word. And I've always been that way, where I've always, okay, God, what does this mean? Give it to me. Give it to me straight. I can handle this. And what I can't handle, I'm going to figure out. So I want to share with you the in-depths of scripture because this is going to help you in your own life and help you bring life its meaning to you. So the backstory of Moses is that he was nursed by his mother. And science tells us that we emanate, we radiate spirit. What the Bible calls spirit, science calls energy. And this energy can be monitored, as it has been monitored with scientific apparatus, that the heart itself radiates an electromagnetic field that radiates and can be measured at least 8 feet or more outside of the body, all around the body. All around the body, from head to toe and all around. So this is what we absorb when we're meeting somebody. So if you're standing in the line and somebody doesn't jive with you, a total stranger, you just kind of get this vibe that, you know, they're not sitting right with you. Like there's something about them that just is rubbing you wrong. Well, that's your energy is incongruent with their energy. So it's like their energy is radiating from them and your energy is radiating from you, and you guys come together and it's electromagnetic. What happens with the magnet when you have the polar opposites? They don't match. You can try to fit them together, but they don't go together. You can force them together. You can do that. But you have to really force, and you can feel the resistance. So when you feel the resistance from somebody, whether it's an argument or a stranger, and you feel that off-putting sensation from them, that's your magnetic energy coming together and meeting them at, what do they call it, at the stage of convergence or divergence, sorry. Convergence, magnetism, there's divergence and convergence. And you guys, if you guys are fighting, if you guys are, you know, reading each other and you just have this off-putting sensation, it's because your magnetism is not matching their magnetism. And there's that polar opposite that can't meet. You can come together. Oh, but it try and put two magnets together with the polar opposites. You'll see what I'm talking about. So the reason why I'm saying this is because our bodies emanate energy. What science calls energy, the Bible calls spirit. So when we are in close proximity with each other, we are absorbing each other's energy. Just let me, sorry. There we go. I feel like I'm sitting here with my all hunched over. So I don't know. Just my view of the camera just looked weird. So that looks better. So when we are all emanating energy or spirit, that energy and spirit has to go somewhere. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It transforms and changes form. And a lot of times it's absorbed by other people and other things. Energy can be absorbed through walls, through floor, through the roof. It can travel along the Schumann resonance of the earth, travel along to other people, where other people across the earth, across the globe, whatever you want, flat earth, globe, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to believe, your energy travels along the Schumann resonance and is picked up by somebody who is in like energy. And your thoughts that travel with your energy, as science has shown that your emotions are emanated from your heart, as your heart pumps out this impulse in waves. Just like the ripples on a pond, you will emanate that way. And your feelings and emotions are emanated along with this inside this electromagnetic field. And so when your energy or your spirit is transported wherever you go and is left behind or travels along some other magnetic frequency out there, somebody who is in the like frequency of you gravitates to it, grabs hold of it, absorbs it, and all of a sudden there's inspired thought. And that inspired thought is actually from you or for somebody else. And yes, from God, but also it's from you. There's thoughts all around, and we absorb thoughts because your thoughts are generated by feelings, and your feelings are generated by thoughts. So, with that said, Moses was raised as a Egyptian. He was raised to become the Pharaoh's son. However, his mother was allowed to nurse him. She fed him from her breast. And with that close encounter of her little baby, her heart's right here. And where is her little baby sitting, nursing at her heart, heart to heart? So she and he are absorbing each other's energy, and she was raised in love. Moses' mother was raised in love according to the Hebrew way. Teach your children. When they get up in the morning, when they lie down, when they sit at the table, when they walk along the road, teach your children my precepts. Teach them about me. So our minds are supposed to be ruminating on God 24/7, and our children's minds are too. We are supposed to be talking about God. If you're talking about God, you're thinking about God. What comes out of your mouth comes out of your heart, right? So the Hebrews had this day and night. They lived the precepts of God. Okay, so this, like his rearing up, yes, comes before the teachings of God were written down. So before the language of Hebrew was written down, it was spoken as an oral tradition. So all the teachings that the Israelites had came from Jacob and his 12 sons that moved into Egypt because of their lost brother Joseph. And that's how come the Israelites were in Egyptian captivity, because the Pharaoh that was ruling at the time of Joseph, that Pharaoh found favor with Joseph. But when Joseph died, then the Pharaoh died, and no longer did the new Pharaoh have favor with the Israelites, because he's like, I didn't know Joseph. I don't know Joseph. So sorry, guys, you're on your own. And so that favor was lost. But these Israelites still lived the oral tradition of the Hebrew way. So when Moses' mother was nursing him and cuddling him and singing Hebrew songs, and she's speaking to him and speaking to his subconscious, his spirit nature, as he's right close to her heart, as he's nursing from her bosom, he's getting a download of godly design, of love. He's getting a download of what it means and what it feels like to be loved in the word, to be addressed as a loving son in God's word. And she's rocking him and cooing him and singing lullabies and singing songs and telling Moses, I love you. You are so loved. You are highly favored. God loves you. And that set the foundation, so that when Moses was weaned from his mother's breast, he walked into Pharaoh's territory already prepared. Even though he didn't know it, he had the foundation in his subconscious mind and heart to know God. He had a heart that sought for God, even though he didn't know it. So people say, oh, You may not be prepared, but when God brings you to it, he'll bring you through it. I've never liked that sentiment because God does not bring you to a situation unprepared. The enemy does. And God uses that situation that the enemy brings. He uses that as a time of what God says discipline. Discipline is a time of preparation. God is not a God who would just push us into the world and say, okay, you're on your own. I'm bringing you to it, so I'm going to get you through it. So follow me and blah, blah, blah. We'll do this together. Yes, we will do this together, but we have to know how to follow God. If there's no foundation there, if there's no preparation there, how is God going to get you through anything when you don't know him, when you don't know how to follow him? And following him is not, oh, I feel God taking me over here, so I'm going to go there. Oh, I feel God taking me over there, so I'm going to go there. No, following God is following his word. Following God is as God said. When you walk along the road, when you go to bed at night, when you sit at the table, you speak about my word. You have your word upon your mind and heart. I have hidden your word in my heart so that I might not sin against you. Following God means you are not sinning. Getting rid of your sin is preparing your heart for God's character. Moses was prepared in his heart and his mind for God's character. There is a foundation there. So when in scripture we read in chapter 2, verse 14, the man said, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian?" This is a prophetic word. If you're listening, this man is speaking. Are you ruler and judge over us because you killed somebody? Well, what happened? Noise from upstairs. Okay, so what happened in verse 11? Let me read that as we back up and get a better understanding of this story. One day after Moses had grown up, he went out to where his own people were and watched them at their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. Looking this way and that and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. So this is premeditated. He knew what he was doing. And murdering somebody is based from a judgment. The next day he went out and saw two Hebrews fighting. He asked the one in the wrong, "Why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew?" So then this man says, "Who made you ruler and judge over us?" Do you see the prophetic message? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian? So already the Hebrews are living an oral tradition law, and they know that there is sin, there is righteous living, there is unrighteous living. And here, these two Hebrews are fighting, they're quarreling. When you fight with somebody, you're judging. You're judging the person and you want them to see your side of things. You don't want to see their side of things. So you combat each other. You're not in harmony with each other. There's judgment there. So when this Hebrew says, are you going to kill me like you killed the Egyptian? Because the Egyptian was beating the Hebrew. Judgment is judgment. It doesn't matter if you put your hands on somebody. You can verbally attack somebody with your words, and you can physically attack somebody with your fists. It comes from the same place, judgment. And so this Hebrew knows the deal and knows that he's doing wrong. And he's like, are you my judge and jury? Are you going to kill me too? And Moses probably was shocked, like, oh my gosh, why would you say that? Moses had mercy for his people. Moses understood his people. He saw both sides. He lived the Pharaoh way, and he had the foundation of the Hebrew lifestyle, the Hebrew loving way in his heart as a foundation for him. He had mercy. And this Egyptian was speaking a prophetic message when he didn't even realize. Are you ruler and judge over us? And isn't that what happened later on in Moses's life? Moses became the judge and ruler over the Israelites. With God's help, of course, but I'm going to explain that God had already brought Moses to this point. God was setting Moses up from the day Moses was fabricated in the womb. God had a purpose for Moses. So this purpose that God has for your life, you can now think back on your life and think of all the negative and positive scenarios you have gone through. And the negative scenarios are to discipline us, to teach us, to make us strong, to build character. Because if you're not strong in character, you will not be able to stand against the enemy. And sometimes that enemy is staring right at you in your own face, yourself. And your enemy is your friends and your family. I can relate a lot with Moses because I was born. Obviously, I was born, but let me finish that sentence. I was born into a family who didn't want me. My mother and father did not want me. They were incapable of loving themselves, let alone loving me. And so I went into the foster care, and I was bounced around from foster home to foster home until I was age 7. At age 7, I landed with a family who did physically take care of my needs, and I'm very grateful for that. I didn't have a need, a want for anything. And I'm very grateful for that. There was always food on the table, and I always had clothes on my back. However, I did not have the spiritual foundation of love. I was never told I was loved. And so I can relate with Moses because I was raised in a family who didn't love. And yet here I am teaching and talking to people, coaching them on how to self-love and how to love others so that we can love God. God sets us up so that we can be built up, so that we can be used. He does not stand there and push us in the middle of a battle unprepared. And that's what I always understood, this: if God brings you to it, he'll bring you through it. Because people use Moses as an example and his stuttering. And we'll get to that in just a moment. So reading Moses his story in chapter 2, verse 21, or excuse me, let's just back up. I'll read chapter 2, verse 15. When Pharaoh heard of this, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in Midian, where he sat down by a well. Now a priest in Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and fill the troughs to water their father's flock. Some shepherds came along and drove them away. But Moses got up and came to their rescue and watered their flock. What does that look like? Immerse yourself in that. Immerse your Christianity in that, and really see the scripture for what it's trying to spiritually tell you. Read between the lines here. Open up those lines of words and read between the lines. Open up your spiritual mind and your eyes and see. What we're being shown here is that there is a priest. Who is our high priest in the order of Melchizedek? Jesus. Okay, so there's a priest. And there is a well, water. Water represents the living word. The flock represents the sheep, us. Moses got up and came to their rescue. This is another prophetic understanding here. This is setting Moses up to rescue people. God is giving him courage to stand. If Moses can stand against shepherds who are scattering the flock, are you seeing the picture? The shepherds of this world, the false leaders, the false teachers, the wolves in sheep's clothing are the false shepherds that are scattered the flock of God all over this world. And there is so much dissension and factions and divisions within the term Christianity that we can't come together. It is so hard because the false leaders have done damage. And so we become Moses-like to educate ourselves, to allow God to educate us, to allow ourselves to be educated by someone who knows Jesus Christ. And we do this all without judging somebody. And we do this in the comforts of our homes, away from other people. Where did Moses go? He fled. He didn't stay in Egypt. He didn't stay in the area of where he was known as a murderer. He fled and went to an unknown place, Midian. He didn't live in Midian. He went there to hide. He hid among strangers. He hid among people who wouldn't recognize him. Yes, people recognized him as an Egyptian because he looked like an Egyptian. Because of his skin color, the Hebrews looked Egyptian. When the girls returned to Reuel, their father, he asked them, why have you turned, or why have you returned so early? So here, it was the girls who went to the well to water their flock. And Moses came to their rescue because the shepherds, probably men, were turning their sheep away. Probably saying, no, let us get water first. You guys can wait. Sounds like a narcissist, right? Yeah. So here Moses comes to their rescue, and their dad, the priest, says, why have you returned so early? Because he's used to them having to wait to get their water for their flock. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? How many times do we have to wait to get our word from God? How many times do we have to stand in line, so to speak? How many times do we sit there and wait and wait and wait for our turn to receive a blessing when the narcissist gets theirs right away? Or the false shepherds of the flock get their money right away as we hand them our money, and we're left going without. They don't share. They just take and take and take and take. When God's kingdom is for everybody, the water, the living word is for everybody. Everybody is allowed to drink at the well. Man, woman, child, old, young, righteous, unrighteous. Everybody is allowed to drink from the living waters, and there's enough to go around. But those greedy people want it all for themselves. So the priest is like, how come you guys are back so early? Wow, like, what's going on? So the girls tell him what happened, that they no longer had to wait. Today they didn't have to wait. They had their portion right away. They had somebody come in and stand as their advocate to help protect them so that they could get their share of the water at the well. Sound familiar? That's Jesus. I'm not saying that Moses is Jesus. I'm saying that this typifies our relationship with Jesus. And so the priest says, where is he? And he said, why did you leave him? Invite him to have something to eat. Doesn't Jesus say, I knock at the door? And it's up to us to open that door of our hearts and invite Jesus in. And when we do, he will eat with us. This is called this is called a marriage covenant. In Hebrew is called the ketubah. And this has everything to do with Hebrew marriage tradition, where the man courts the girl, and the girl lives at her parents' house, her father's house. And when the man comes to ask for the girl's hand in marriage, he knocks on the door, and the father comes and peeks to see who it is, and he closes the door, gets the daughter, and the daughter answers the door. And he proposes to her, and she can either accept or not. And if she accepts, she invites her groomsmen to come in, and there's a dinner made, and they have a nice dinner as celebratory, yes, but also they work out a marriage covenant. The families work out, this is your responsibility, this is my responsibility. When you two are married, it wasn't just the two people, the bride and groom, that were coming together in marriage. It was the families, and the families of the bride had a covenant with the groom and the bride, of course, but there was a covenant, and everybody had to sign, and there had to be a witness. So it wasn't just saying, yes, come into my house, I invite you in, and we don't have to do anything. There was an actual covenant. There was an actual written on paper that was sealed. And it was signed and sealed and put away. And these terms of this marriage covenant had to be adhered to. If not, could be stoned to death. So what's happening here is the priest is inviting Moses to come into his home. Doesn't Jesus say, in my Father's house there are many rooms, I'm going to prepare a place for you? Here's that word, I'm going to prepare a place for you. When God brings you to it, he gets you through it. It's not that God is bringing you to the cusp of trouble and you have to walk through that trouble unprepared. God uses your whole entire life from birth until now has been a preparation. Are you listening? It's your responsibility to be listening. It's time to wake up. Wake up. Moses agreed to stay with the man who gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. Zipporah gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershom, saying, I have become a foreigner in a foreign land. So let's get something straight here, okay? Moses leaves to a foreign land to hide himself because the Pharaoh wanted to kill him because Moses murdered an Egyptian. So this is not overnight stuff here. This is a time delay here. This is a moment of time. Time is passing for Moses. It takes 9 months from conception to birth. So at least there's 9 months here, almost a year from our calendar standpoint. There's almost a year that goes by that Moses is in Midian. Now, I know dating is done differently in modern times where you see somebody and you're just hitting the sheets right away. No. That's wrong. Wrong, people. Wrong. You court for marriage. That's the proper way to do things. You make sure you're compatible with that person. It takes time to date someone. Sometimes it takes 6 months. Sometimes it takes a year. Sometimes it takes 2 years. Sometimes it takes 5 years, because you really don't get to know a person until you see them being put through the sieve, the pressure of life puts pressure on them, and you really don't get to see a person for who they truly are until things get really rough. So, do you think that the priest is going to give his daughter away to any Tom, Dick, and Harry? Moses had to prove himself, just like Jacob had to prove himself. So, a long time has gone by before Moses has been accepted into the family. He's now married. He has a son. And then scripture says, during that long period, the king of Egypt died. During that long period, a long time. Would you say 40 years is a long time? It took a long time for Noah to build that ark, right? It wasn't, oh, there it is, overnight. No, because even that is a metaphor to show us that what is supposed to be is that it takes as long as it takes for us to build ourselves up in our faith. And when you are building yourself up in your faith, you are building yourself up to help build others in their faith. So there's extra time and extra preparation time needed for that. When you're called to be a leader, you first become a follower. Some people stay followers, but those that are called to be leaders, it takes a long time. Sometimes 40 years, like Noah building the ark. Sometimes 40 years, like the Israelites wandering the desert. Sometimes a long time, like Moses in Midian, building a family, building a rapport. Do you think he was sitting on his laurels and on his hands, doing nothing and just making babies in Midian? He had to be trustworthy for this priest. So this priest is going to test him, going to walk tenderly with him, going to see how much Moses knows about the Lord, about living in the Lord's name, not just speaking about the Lord. Oh yeah, I believe in Jesus, like many of us do. No, Reuel wanted to see Moses's spiritual fruit. I'm not giving you away to my daughter unless I see that you're worthy, son. And if you're not ready, well, guess what? That is my job as a priest to teach you and make you ready. Jesus is our high priest in the order of Melchizedek. Do you not think that he would prepare our hearts too? We cannot just say, oh, I believe in Jesus. It doesn't work. Our hearts need to be prepared. You can't prepare your hearts to receive the character of Jesus, who is love, if your heart is still so full of sin. If your heart is full of sin and you're lying, you're cheating, you're stealing, that's not love. If your heart is ruled in unloving acts, then that pushes out love, and your heart cannot be prepared to receive love. You first have to lay down those acts. You have to put those things aside and stop doing them. When you stop doing them, your heart now becomes prepared to receive the opposite of sin, which is righteousness, which is loving things. If you are used to telling a lie, you put away those lying ways, that prepares your heart to receive the truth, so you can speak the truth and act the truth. But you can't do that until you are taught by the truth. And that's what Reuel did. It took a long time to teach Moses. Even though there was a foundation there built by trust and love from his mother, Reuel picked up where his mother left off. Reuel became Moses's father figure. Ooh, that just came to me. Thank you, Jesus. So now, during that long period, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out, and their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. God heard their groanings, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. So God looked on the Israelites and was concerned about them. So this concern started way before they even started to cry out for God, as God prepared Moses right from birth. Chapter 3. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness. Okay, I'm just... Did I read something wrong here? In verse 18, chapter 2, When the girls returned to Reuel, their father, they asked him, he asked them, why have you returned so early today? They answered, an Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock. And where is he? Reuel asked his daughters. Why did you leave him? Invite him to have something to eat. Moses agreed to stay with the man who gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. Zipporah gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershon. So I wasn't wrong in saying Reuel was Moses's father-in-law, but in chapter 3, now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. So did this man Reuel have a name change? That's something to look into. And he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God, where the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. Sorry, I just had my phone on the floor and I saw a text come in. And Moses said, here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Sorry, I'm just going back because this is bothering me. Was Moses married before he left for Midian? Or was he a single man? I don't know. This is just bothering me because there's like two names here, and I've never seen that before. Like I mean, I've read it, but I never clicked before, and it's sitting there niggling at me. It's bugging me. It's niggling at me. Okay. So I just wanted to backtrack because that's just bugging me. Okay, so moving on. I'm over it. Moving on. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Now, maybe some of you are not aware of this, but God is mentioning the land of giants here as well. And we're at the 51 mark. Just to let you know, my microphone, I'm using the app Crisp, where it takes out, the echo in the room and background noise. That's going to stop in about 10 minutes. So you might now hear an echo soon. So it's fine. There's nothing wrong with my microphone. It's just my app has stopped working because I'm using the free service, and it only allows you to use an hour a day. So now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way of the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. So the Pharaoh that knew Joseph died. The new Pharaoh comes in, oppresses the Israelites. That Pharaoh adopts Moses. That Pharaoh dies, and in comes a new one. So now God says to Moses, go. Because this Pharaoh does not know Moses, and Moses does not know this Pharaoh. But Moses has the upper hand because he's educated in the Egyptian arts and the Egyptian ways of sorcery and witchcraft. He knows the mind of the Egyptians. He knows how they think. He knows what they do. He knows how they conduct themselves. He knows their traditional ways. And God said, I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Okay, we're still live. Okay, my camera just cut out there for a minute. Sorry about that break, but that was just letting me know that our time for this microphone echo is here now. Okay, so I don't know. There was a glitch, and I think it was just my Crisp app. It stopped working because the hour time was up, and so the streaming apparatus that I'm using, the streaming app that I'm using, had to compensate for that. So there's a little bit of a break, but those who come back, return, we're still live. So let's keep going. So God said that the sign to know that I am with you will be that you will worship God. You and the people will worship God on this mountain. So, what I want to share with you is many people are looking for immediate signs. Immediate signs. God, show me a sign. Let me know that you're directing me here. And, excuse me, we expect a sign to be like right now, in our faces right now, so we can go. God is seeking our trust. It does not work when you say, oh, I think God told me this. And I'm guilty for that. Many years ago in my, when I first started in my Christianity, I would say, I think God told me this. I'm not sure if it was me or When you are secure in knowing who you are and you know who Jesus is because you follow him, not by physical sight, but by spiritual eyes, because you uproot the sin in you and you adopt his ways as your own, you begin to have a relationship with God. You begin to know what love is and what love isn't. And when you apply what love is, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 8 into your life, then you learn how to love yourself as you love your neighbor. You learn to love your neighbor as yourself. You learn to love yourself and your neighbor as you love God. Love does not change. And so, when you hear God speak, God needs your trust. When God calls you to do something, oh, you do it. And the reward will be after you have done what is called of you. Now, your calling may be years in the making, and your calling may be now, but it may be a duration of time where it's going to take 6 months for you to reach the end of that calling or the end of that work that God wants you to do in His name, not your works, His works. So God says to Moses, and the sign will be, not, and the sign is this. Here you go. The sign is that I am God talking to you, is that I'm burning in a bush. There's your sign. No, he says the sign will be, meaning Moses will have to look for the sign at the end when the divine appointment has reached its fruition. When Moses has reached the end of what he is called to do, when people worship him on this mountain, when Moses brings the people to the mountain, Mount Hermon, when Moses brings these people physically out from Egypt. Can you just imagine that? All these Egyptians, thousands and thousands and thousands of Egyptians are oppressed, and one man, Moses, is called, bring my people here. I've heard their cries. It's time to liberate them. Bring them here, and I will be with you. That takes a lot of trust, and trust is earned. How is trust earned? By doing and following God's precepts. If you don't follow God's precepts, he doesn't trust you. That's a hard pill to swallow. He still loves you, but he doesn't trust you. If God can't trust you with his word, of you living his word in your life, how can he trust you with his word to go and share it with other people? It makes you a hypocrite. God's word will not return to him empty. Hypocrisy is emptiness, is unworthiness, is worthless, is meaningless. God prepared Moses right from birth. God prepared Moses. He gave Moses the foundation of the Hebrew love through his mother's love. Then he had Moses live in the enemy's territory. And he was raised by the enemy so that Moses would be able to discern and understand and see and live the Egyptian way and understand the Egyptian secrets. Moses was the mole. And Moses was called because he had a heart for God through his mother. He had a heart for God. Murdering people is not right in modern day, and God says, you shall not murder. However, God called Moses because it took that kind of spirit of courageousness, willing to do what it takes to stand up for your people, because your people are God's people. God's people and God are one. You fight for God's people, you're fighting for God. Pharaoh was of the enemy, not just an enemy in, oh, you hurt my feelings, we're not friends anymore. Enemy was sorcery, witchcraft, denying that God exists. and magnifying God's enemy, the serpent. When you look at Egyptian hieroglyphs, when you look at their ideology, when you look at their worship that they worshiped serpentine beings. They were involved in all kinds of heresy. And we're not just talking about incest and bestiality. We're talking about mixing bloodlines. We're talking about having intimate sexual relations with the spirit world. And having the spirit world, the Nephilim, the fallen angels, teach the Pharaoh, teach the Egyptians on sexual intimacy. Yeah. God did not punish Moses for killing somebody who was against God in the way of promoting evil to the core. Like the Pharaoh promoted evil and subjugated God's people. Moses acted on instinct. And Moses looked around. Is anybody watching? Because he had it in his heart to do what needed to be done. Because if it wasn't Moses, then who? Who would do that? There was nobody else. It was one man and one man only. There was nobody. The Bible doesn't say, oh, God prepared another person in case Moses decided not to do what he wanted, what God wanted him to do. No, the Bible doesn't say that. Moses was our only hope. If it wasn't for Moses, we would not be here, my friends. Think about that for a minute. If it was not Moses, then there would have been nobody. God prepared Moses. God created Moses. God thought of Moses before Moses was even born. God knit Moses' body in his mother's womb. God put the spirit of God's love in Moses. God had Moses go through torture living in the Pharaoh's household. What kind of torture? Think about your childhood trauma. Think about all the narcissistic bullcrap that you have had to go through and endure over the years. That's by design. That's to educate you of the enemy. That's to educate you, and you've been sitting in the enemy's camp. You're the mole. You are the mole for God. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to sit there and lament and, oh, God just wants me to be there. Oh, God hates me. Oh, this life is just so horrible. Oh. How's that working for you? Get with the program and understand that God created you just as much as he created Moses. God put you right in this situation that you are in right now. He's prepared you ever since you were born. Put your skills to the test. Grow up. Man up. Woman up. You want to call yourself a Christian? You want to call yourself a believer? Now's the time. I believe in Jesus, and I can sin and do whatever I want. No. When you sin, you are worshiping the enemy, and you are giving credit to the enemy. Your mouth says you love Jesus, but your actions show that you hate him. Read John. Sorry, don't mean to yell, but this world that we are living in with these. I'm still seeing people, and people so scared that they're still getting the second and third and fourth and fifth jibby jab in their arms. Wake up. Read the 4 books of John. You have to love God, and how you show you love God is by following him, obeying his word. If you don't obey God, but you say you love him, John says it, not me. You're a liar. Moses was raised with a foundation to love God through his mother. Then he ran and hid from being murdered because he was not yet ready to stand against evil. He knew of evil, but he didn't know how to stand against it because he was not trained and taught in the word of God. He was not allowed to follow the word of God. He was taught to deny the word of God, even though he didn't deny the word of God. But he lived in the Pharaoh's house, so he had to show some sort of loyalty. And I know this because I, too, was living in the Pharaoh's house with my foster family. I had to show some sort of loyalty, and my loyalty, I got accused of doing some stupid things that I never even did. But my foster did them, my foster sister did them, and blamed them on me. That's the way it goes. It's okay. But Moses did not have the word of God. The Israelites did not have the word of God. The Israelites had oral tradition. Pharaoh taught Moses Egyptian language. Now, the Pharaoh and the Egyptians had to learn Hebrew in order to communicate, as the Hebrews had to learn Egyptian in order to communicate. So there is bilingual going on here, or bilingualism, going on here. Now, chapter 3, verse 13. Moses said to God, "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' Then what shall I tell them?" Is he arguing with God at this point? I missed a scripture. Backing up to verse 11, Moses says to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I?" I just came out of a personal journey of self-awareness, of healing my childhood trauma. I have all of that on my YouTube video, YouTube/SRNITYBLU, or just type in Shannon Lynn Christian Guidance. Your Christianity is built around understanding who you are. Okay? Moses, I don't have here yet. I have not yet seen so far in our reading where Moses says, "Oh, I'm slow to speech. I have a stutter. I can't talk. Oh my gosh, I'm so nervous to be around crowds. Oh my gosh, why are you choosing me?" And then he goes into panic. I'm not seeing it yet. I see, verse 11, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" Now, you could take it that Moses is like, I'm just lowly. I'm unworthy. Oh my gosh. God, I'm unworthy. I can't do this. No. No, 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 no. No. Moses lived with Ruel. He lived with the priest of Midian. He was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. Okay, that's the opening sentence in chapter 3. He married Zipporah, the daughter of Ruel. That's found in chapter 2. He, after a long period, the Pharaoh of Egypt died. So Moses was surrounded now by people who worshiped God. Maybe not the Egyptian way, maybe not the Israel way that he knew about in Egypt. Because the Egyptians there, the Hebrews there in Egypt who were in captivity, they probably had some Egyptian ways mingled in with their Hebrew ways, their oral tradition. Hence the reason for the commandments. Because when you look at the commandments, you can stand them up against the Egyptian way, and God says, don't do this, but do this. Don't do that, but do this. So the don'ts that God is mentioning are the things that the pharaohs and the Egyptians did. So Moses had time to get away from all of that and learn an organic way of learning about God, a spiritual way, away from man's ways. He just learned from the priest with no outside influence. And he could recognize God's voice because of the foundation his mother gave him. So he's like, who am I? Have you ever gone to God and actually questioned who you are? I have. And why I questioned who I am is because of my childhood trauma. 2 years ago, I came to an understanding, and I've always known this, but I just kind of pushed it under the rug. When God really showed me, okay, Shannon, it's time to get to the nitty-gritty of this. When God showed me that my dad tried to murder me, I'd always known this and I accepted it, but to really understand the spiritual nature of this, that when my mom was pregnant with me, when her belly was full of my little body kicking in her womb, my dad and her had an argument. And that argument caused my dad to rage, that he went to go get his gun. Because my mother told him that I was not his child. So me growing up hearing that story once or twice, I just kind of shoved it in the back of the recesses of my mind and forgot about it. Yeah, my dad didn't want me. Okay, understood. I'm over it. And then when social services would come into my foster home every month to do an assessment of how I'm adjusting, I can tell you the foster woman's, the social worker's name. I could tell you her name. I could tell you she sitting right across the table from me as I sat in my foster home at the kitchen table. She's interviewing me and it's just her and I. She's got her little notepad and paper out. She's like, yeah, we showed your dad your picture and he denies you. How do you feel about that? You don't tell a 7-year-old little girl who's trying to find a freaking identity when her foster parents say, you don't have a family now. I'm your mom, and you are not allowed to talk about your family. Your memories, obsolete. You're not allowed to talk about your family anymore. I lost my identity going into that foster family by having my foster family not allowing me to retain who I am or who I was. Then God 2 years ago says, okay, let's deal with this, Shannon. Let's just deal with this. Your dad tried to murder you. How do you feel about that? Not just physically, Shannon, spiritually. You came into this world created by a man who was full of anger, disgust and rage for himself and the world and women, who was a misogynist, and he didn't even know who you were, but he denied you and he wanted to kill you and your mother. I started rejecting myself in the womb as I absorbed the negative energy from my parents' mouths. As what comes out of your mouth comes from your heart. Their hearts were raging at each other, and I was absorbing all of that negative energy in the womb as the energy was absorbed by the water that surrounded me as I breathed that in as my life substance. That negative energy was my living water in the womb. And so I was born premature because I was rejecting myself in the womb, and I rejected her body rejected me as I rejected myself. So I was born at 7 months. So I was 2 months premature. Had to have a life-saving procedure where I had to have a blood transfusion. My lungs were underdeveloped. I couldn't breathe. Oh, this is just coming to me. It makes sense why I had lung problems, because I'm breathing in that negative energy. Stifling my growth, stifling me, stifling my voice, stifling the very oxygen that I needed to breathe on. So, hi. So for anybody who asks, who am I? You ask that when you go through your transition of self-actualization and self-acceptance and accepting who you are as God's child. Because after I came out of this realization, I said, God, you got to love me, because if you don't, I'm nothing. I'm really. That's not just, people say I'm nothing without God. I really felt that, and I took that in, and it freaking broke me. It broke me, and I cried out to God, and I just said to him, if you don't love me, I have no reason to be here. Why am I here? Who am I? I need to feel like I'm your daughter. I know you're with me, but I don't feel like you're my daughter, like I'm your daughter. I don't feel it. Because at that time, I was still looking for acceptance from my mommy and daddy, who hate me because they hate themselves, and I'm over it. I'm okay with it. But being without God is the reason why I cry and tear up, because being without God is a heartbreak to your soul that you can never recover from. So Moses saying, who am I, God? Who am I? He's lived in 2 worlds. Who is he? If I don't belong to the Pharaoh, but my mother was Hebrew, why? Who am I? Give me this foundation. Plant me where you want to plant me in my heart. Give me the conviction to know who I am. And God answers that. Moses says to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" He doesn't understand who he is, that God is giving him authority by teaching him. He doesn't understand that he belongs to God. He's saying, "Who am I? Who am I, God, that you are calling me to do this, that I'm going to stand before Pharaoh? I don't belong to Pharaoh anymore. I never did. I never fit in. And you're asking me to stand before Pharaoh and meet him at his understanding? I don't belong there, God. I don't know where I belong." And God says, "I will be with you. And this will be the sign to you that it is I who has sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain." That's the only sign that Moses is going to get. So Moses is being asked to put his trust in God that he has been taught through Jethro and Reuel. He has now been asked. Basically, God is saying, "Trust me." Do you trust me? If we trust God, we will obey. That's why we still sin, my friends. When we are still in our sin, it's because we don't trust God. Moses says to God, "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you.'" See, Moses is not saying the God of our fathers, the God of our father, excuse me, because he's still addressing, "Who am I? Who am I?" And he says, "Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them," he's still making the distinction of him being separate from the Israelites. And this is what self-actualization and uprooting the trauma is all about, my friends. The world teaches us that we're separate from each other, that we're separate from God. No, we're not. We're not separate from our Father in heaven. And just because we've had experiences that are outside our Father in heaven, we begin to identify with them. But no, we've always been meant to identify with Jesus. And so Moses isn't saying, "Suppose I go to my people. Suppose I go to my family and say to them, 'The God of our fathers.'" No, Moses doesn't say that. Listen carefully. Moses says, "Suppose I go to the Israelites." He's not identifying himself with an Israelite. He's not identifying himself as a slave, even though he was. He was a slave of the enemy while living in the enemy's territory, while living in the household of the enemy. There is no distinction between the Israelites and him. He came from the Israelites, but just because he wasn't suppressed like the Israelites, he was still suppressed like the Israelites. It takes some spiritual understanding to see this. That just because Moses didn't have the same experience as the Israelites, he still had the same subjugation as the Israelites. He was still subjugated. He was still unable to live as how he was meant to live as a godly man. And in this, Moses is not identifying himself with an Israelite. He says, "Suppose I go to your people. Suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you.'" The Bible doesn't tell us that Moses knew his earthly father. He had a stand-in, and that stand-in was Pharaoh. And that stand-in is always a pale stand-in compared to God our Father. So Moses is not identifying himself with God and being a citizen of heaven. And I can understand this. 2 years ago, I was just like, God, you need to show me. I know you're with me. And God kept telling me, Shannon, I've adopted you as a daughter. Your life as an adopted daughter in your physical life is a testament to that. I'm like, yeah, God, but I had to prove myself in that family. And even when I did good, I still was not told I was loved. Nothing I did in that family was ever good enough. I never got anything. I never got my heart's desire. I never got anything I asked for. I never got love. I never got the hugs. I never got the pat on the back. I never got supported when I did something, like achieved something, like had won a medal at my organ recital, or I had basketball or badminton practice. My foster parents never supported me on that. And so coming to God as an adopted daughter already, that was hard for me to swallow, because I treated God as how my foster parents treated me. So anything I asked, I was like scared to ask. And when I asked, I always came to God with the heart of, oh, he's going to say no. But I'm going to ask anyways, because it's what God tells us to do. So God is just getting me to ask so he could say no and say, ha, 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 Shannon, you're my daughter, but I decide what I give you. Ha, ha, ha. I had to uproot that trauma. And I put that trauma on God, and I projected that on God, and I hindered myself. I hindered blessings that God wanted to give me because of that experience. And because of that experience, I wouldn't allow God to be my father, because I'm just like, God, no. You're going to treat me like my foster parents did. I had two foster parents, a mother and a father, but my foster father was never there. And in front of me, talking to his in-laws, right there with me, he said, oh, I'm thinking of taking my family on a trip to England, because that's where he's from. And I was right there. And he said, but Shannon can't come, so we have to make arrangements for her. Would you mind looking after her for a couple of weeks? Can she stay here at her Auntie Carol's house for a couple of weeks while I take my family to England? And my Aunt Carol said, well, it's like, I felt like saying, hello, I'm in the room, I'm right here. But I was only 12, and I was taught not to say things, not to interject. It's rude to interject and interrupt adult conversation. So I heard this because I was right there. I looked at my dad, and I couldn't believe the words coming out of his mouth, and it gutted me. It gutted me. And I've never told anybody, and I'm telling you guys now, I've never spoke of this. And he said, Shannon is not the part of the family, so she can't come. Her lineage is not from England, so she can't come. Well, my birth grandfather, he was from Wales, but I'm not a part of their family, so I could not come. Parents, you don't understand the words, how toxic they are to little ears. Watch what you say and watch what you do, because that gets absorbed. Don't you for 1 minute say, oh, kids are resilient, kids bounce back, kids are fine. No, we absorb that toxicity, and you know that from the unhealed childhood trauma that you're going through, and we all put that on God. We all do. And so I can relate with Moses here. Thank you, Jesus, for this teaching today, because I'm learning new stuff. Moses says, who am I that you should send me out to your people? Moses doesn't even identify with God's name. He knows about God, but he doesn't know his name because he's still thinking, I am. Who am I? Who am I? Listen to that. Am I? Switch it around. See, am I is a separation from I am. You see how the words are twisted? The enemy twists and reinverts the words of God to make them his own. And that's what we have here. We have a transitioning of the phrase I am to I or am I. Put who am I in front of that, and you have a question. And that question causes a separation, an individuation outside of our creation. And that's what Moses is feeling. Who am I, God? If Moses knew who he was, that he was a part of the Israelites as he was a part of God, one with God, as he followed God, as he was taught by God through other people who also followed God. He was one in spirit with his Father. He was one in spirit with the Israelites. He wouldn't be asking, who am I? He would be saying, I am. There would be no who. He would be like, I know who I am. Who am I? Who I am. So Moses is asking, what's your name? Who do I tell them sent me? God said to Moses, I am who I am. Oh my gosh, I wasn't even thinking of this when I said what I just said. Who am I? Who I am? I wasn't even thinking that. God, you're here. Thank you, Jesus. Whoa, this is pretty heavy. So Moses is getting a lesson. I am who I am. Moses, in a few sentences before that, asked, who am I? God is saying, you are me. I am with you. I am a part of you. I am in you. I am who I am. I am you. I choose to be you. You are me. We are family. The Bible says that we are all one under the house of God. We belong to one spirit. That one spirit is in all of us. So don't send hate email here. Don't mix my words. The Bible says it, not me. If Jesus is in me, and I know he is, I am one with Jesus, and Jesus is one with me. The Bible makes it clear. If you remain in me and I remain in you, then whatever you ask for in my name, you shall receive. So Moses is now getting his identity. He's having an identity check. He's being told who he is. I am you, you are me. You are in me, and I am in you. We are one. And I'm using you as a vessel to go out and collect the Israelites. And how you will know that it is me working through you as we are one, I choose you to be my vessel to work through. you will see that all these people, you will gather them on this mountain and they will worship me on this mountain. That's how you know. When those people are delivered out of the Pharaoh's hands, and you know how dangerous the Pharaoh is, you know how powerful he is. But Moses, I'm asking you to trust me. I'm not asking you, I'm telling you, trust me, because I'm in you and you in me. You are in me. I am who I am. You asked, who am I, God, that I should help the Israelites? God says, I am who I am. I'm choosing to be you. I'm choosing you. You and me. Are you seeing this? Like, I don't think you're really grasping the gravity of this. It's like me choosing. I have 2 other cups exactly like this. They look the same, but they have little deviations. One has a little divot here, and one has a little divot here. And so I just grabbed this cup. And let's say this is my favorite cup. Out of the 3 cups, this is my favorite. Because this cup is made perfect. I chose this cup. Think of us as being the cup. God chose us to be the cup that is filled with his holy word, his living word. No other cup will do. He chose. I'm going to choose this cup. And I'm going to keep choosing this cup because this cup is ideal. I made this cup. I cleaned this cup. This cup, I don't want any other cup. I like this cup. I like the color. I like the shape. It holds in the heat, and it's pretty to look at. It's plain, but I like the color, and it goes with my eyes. Just kidding. You get the point. I hope you do. Because Moses is saying, he's not understanding his spirituality. He's like, who am I that you? He's making a separation. There's I and you. There's me and you. Who am I that you should choose me? And God says, I am who I am. And Jesus says, if you remain in me and I remain in you, then whatever you ask for in my name, you shall receive. There is no who am I in the way of, who am I, God? Oh, I'm not worthy. Who am I that you should choose me? There is only that distinction when you don't understand who you are. God knows who you are. But God has to bring you to the point of understanding who you are. Oh, this is just coming to me. When people say God will bring you to it, he'll bring you through it. God brings you to the point of understanding who you are. Because if you don't know who you are, you cannot be used for his good and perfect purposes. You can't be used for his glory. This cup is not conscious, okay? This cup doesn't care. It doesn't know who it is. But if it did, and if this cup was aware of me choosing it for me to drink from, it would have a choice to sit in the cupboard and not be chosen, or be chosen and have me drink water and liquid from it. And it would get handheld and touched and appreciated. And my hands wrapped around the cup would keep it warm, make it feel safe. Don't you think this cup would be bouncing to the front of the line in the cupboard and saying, jumping up and choose me, choose me, choose me. Or if it knew that it would always be chosen, that it would be satisfied. There would be no worry, there would be no doubt. Be the cup, as we are the cup. We're jars of clay. We are wineskins. God says to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent you. I am one with Jesus. Jesus lives in me. Say that until you start believing it. I can do all things in Jesus because Jesus is in me. I am one with him. I am who I am because he is I am who I am. There's no distinction between the two of us. Even though I have a spiritual body, our Father in heaven does not. I separate myself from him by choosing to remain individuated, separate from God, by saying, Shannon, I, me. When someone calls me Shannon, yes. I don't take God with me. I work in my own understanding, even though God is in my heart and I act in love, but I'm not aware of it in the way of, oh, God and I are one. No, I want to do this. I think I want to draw today instead of studying the Bible. I think I'd rather go and walk on the beach instead of going and sharing the message today. I want to do what I want to do. I don't want to do what God wants me to do. You see the distinction? When God calls you to do something, you are being called to be united with him. And when he calls us to get rid of our sin, this is a lifetime effort. We are being called to be united to him as one, as our character changes to be one with his. This is pretty heavy stuff here. Say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of, Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. So God is allowing him to believe that distinction, but just because he believes it doesn't make it true. God working through Moses will show Moses to whom he is and to whom he belongs. He belongs to the I am, as he is one with the I am, as he is a part of the I am. There's no distinction. This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation. Why do you think we say, I am? Why do you think we say, I am? I am sick. I am lonely. I am. God is a God of positivity. Instead of saying negative things about ourselves, as we're putting negativity on Jesus who is inside of us, let's start saying, I am joyful. As God says, let your joy be full. I am full of joy. I have Jesus living in me. I am satisfied. I am prosperous. I am healthy. And prosperous doesn't mean just money. It means prosperous in our speech, in our thinking, in our tasks that we're doing. I am prosperous in friendships. I am prosperous in being. all that I am in this world. I am wise. I am knowledgeable. I am healthy. I am courageous. I am happy. I am joyful. I am saying everything that is in Scripture. But the negatives we say about ourselves, that's not of the Word. Choose this day in whom you will serve. As for me and my house, me, myself, and I, we will serve the Lord. And because I'm serving the Lord, I am one with I am. Go assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, appeared to me and said, I have watched over you and have seen what has been done to you in Egypt. And I have promised to bring you up out of your misery in Egypt into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. The elders of Israel will listen to you. Then you and the elders are to go to the king of Egypt and say to them, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews has met with us. Let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand compels him. So I will stretch out my hand and strike the Egyptians with all the wonders that I will perform among them. After that, he will let you go. And I will make the Egyptians favorably disposed towards this people, so that when you leave, you will not go empty-handed. Every woman is to ask her neighbor and any woman living in her house for articles of silver and gold and for clothing, which you will put on your sons and daughters, and so you will plunder the Egyptians. Moses answered, what if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, the Lord did not appear to you? Then the Lord said to him, what is in your hand? A staff, he replied. The Lord said, throw it on the ground. So Moses threw it on the ground. That's establishing trust. And it became a snake, and he ran from it. Then the Lord said to him, reach out your hand and take it by the tail. So Moses reached out and took the hold of the snake and turned it back into a staff in his hand. So this is establishing trust. We naturally don't go hard grabbing snakes by the tail. But God is asking Moses, put your life on the line. It's the same thing as what God asked of Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac. When you get bit by a poisonous snake, you die. If there's no antivenom, you can die within 20 minutes of a snake bite, depending on how ferocious that poison is. So Moses obviously ran from the snake because he knew it was a poisonous snake, a venomous snake. And if he got bit, he would die. So Moses feared for his life by a snake. And God tells Moses, pick up the snake by the tail. If somebody told you to pick up a king cobra or what's the colorful snakes, the black, yellow, and red snake, someone told you to pick up a venomous snake by the tail, would you? You'd be stupid to, right? You'd be like, oh, heck no. Oh, heck no. No. Heck no. No. Oh, frick no. This is God talking to him. Moses has already seen the staff turn into a snake. So he has one of two choices, to trust God or not to trust God. He trusted God enough to pick up the snake or pick up the staff and it turned into a snake, or he threw down the staff, and it changed into a snake. So he saw that. And God's telling him, pick up the snake. Did Moses say, no, God, I can't. No, God, don't make me do this. No, God, I can't. Excuse me. Moses obeyed. So Moses reached out and took hold of the snake, and it turned back into a staff in his hand. Sorry, I got a tickle in my throat now. How many times has God talked to you and told you to do something and you didn't do it? I'm guilty. We don't do it because of a lack of trust, because we differentiate ourselves from God, the I am. When we don't do something, it's because of a lack of trust, because we don't trust, because we don't have a relationship with God. If we don't have a relationship with God, we don't know who we are. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. If you don't love your neighbor as yourself, if you don't love yourself as your neighbor, you cannot love God. If you cannot identify yourself with God by walking in love, in his character, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4-8, love is patient, love is kind, it is not rude, it does not boast, it keeps no record of wrongs, it does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always hopes, always trusts, always perseveres. Love never fails. If you don't live that and apply that to your own life and are loving towards yourself in that way, you can't be loving towards others in that way. You treat others as yourself. That's what that scripture means, that you treat others the way that you want to be treated. You want to be treated in love? Show people that you want to be treated in love by treating yourself in love. Then you will be able to treat others that same way, and you watch. Love covers all wrongs. You will see mercy of others. You will see the kindness of others. You will see it, guaranteed it. Because love, this unconditional love, is truth. And if you can't love yourself this way, you can't love others this way. And if you can't love others this way, and if you can't love yourself this way, you can't love God this way. And there will always be a separation. God uses your life and the troubles in it to establish trust. I know this to be true. I'm speaking from experience here. I asked God. I lived on a farm out in the boondocks. I had a forestry on 3 sides of me. And on the 4th side was a gravel road that seemingly led to nowhere. I was 15 minutes away from a small town that only housed 400 people. And I was an hour and a half away from the city where I had to go and get my groceries. So being on this farm for 12 years I had neighbors, but you had to cross the field to get to the neighbor. So in the middle of winter, those fields would be 4 feet full of snow. So if you needed your neighbor's help, you were either walking the gravel road to get to their home or crossing the plot of land and walking. So walking through the land to get to the neighbor would probably be about a 20-minute walk, give or take. Walking through 4 feet of snow, an hour at least, maybe even more, in the middle of winter. So my point being is I was in solitude. And at the time, I was married, and my then husband would go off and to work for 2 weeks at a time and leave me and our child on the farm as I homeschooled. And when he left to go to work, I would always have a problem. And I'm not saying always as a generalization. More times than not, I would have a problem with my car, tire issues, or just it wouldn't start, maybe carburetor issues, gas line issues, brake issues. There would be always something On a regular basis, there would be something wrong with the car. And one time I asked God, God, I'm noticing a pattern here. Just one thing goes wrong, and usually I notice that one thing the day or the day after he leaves to go to work. So I'm left stranded for 2 weeks on this farm by myself without a vehicle. I started getting wise and checking my vehicle before he left. It would be fine. But then when he'd be gone, I'd go back to get in my car and say, okay, we're going to get groceries. A flat tire. So I would ask God, God, why do you just use one thing? When he leaves, when there's nobody around, why are you using my car? One thing with my car. Everything else in my life seems fine, but my vehicle, I have no mode of transportation to get out, to get groceries, to do what I need to do during the day. Why are you using this one thing? Like, why? His answer? Because I need you dependent on me. I need to get your attention, and I need you to lean on me. Stop leaning on others for help. Stop relying on your car to get you where you need to go. Rely on me. Rely that I will watch over your car. Don't rely on that your then husband had mechanic expertise. Don't rely on the mechanic 9 miles down the road to come and tow your car, to change the tire on your car at the garage. Don't rely on that. Rely on me. God needs us to be united to him through and through, and he will use your circumstances to prepare you for that unity. The Bible does say that we are married to God after all, that is what this all preparation is for. So, have you, in our reading of this so far, and we're at 2 hours, have you so far heard Moses say, I'm slow to speech and I stutter? No, he says, who am I? And if there is, let me just think. Let me just go into the internet here. Just typing. Okay. Okay, Exodus 4:10. Okay. So, it is in Exodus 4:10 where Moses finally, after being told, I am who I am, after being told, you can identify with me, Moses, I'm going to be using you as a vessel. I am going to be working through you. I chose you. I prepared you. I am going to use you. And Moses isn't grabbing a clue that his whole life, from the point of birth until up until that point of seeing the burning bush, he's not grabbing a clue to say, oh my gosh, you have prepared me. I see you in the details all throughout my life. Oh my gosh, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. No, he's not doing that. He's like, who am I? And what if they don't believe me? Okay, here, I'm showing you proof by turning this staff into a snake. Now pick it up. Okay, he does that, and it's still not good enough. And God is telling him that the elders will listen to you, and this is going to happen, that Pharaoh won't let you go. But you know what? When you do get that release? Every woman is to ask her neighbor and every woman living in her house for articles of silver and gold, and you will plunder the Egyptians. You will leave with all their gold. You will leave them with all the things that they have accumulated. And Moses answered, what if they don't believe me or listen to me? Well, God says, what is in your hand? A staff. So here we have Moses being shown. He's being told, he's being shown. Okay? You know, words have to have fruition. You can't just say something and not follow through. So God is making his word known through action and showing Moses what he's capable of, what he can do. And if that wasn't good enough, God is still speaking to Moses and saying, the Lord says, put your hand inside your cloak. So Moses put his hand into his cloak. And when he took it out, the skin was leprous. And it became white as snow. Now put it back into your cloak. And so Moses put his hand back into his cloak. And when he took it out, it was restored like the rest of his flesh. So Moses is being shown what God can do to inanimate objects, and Moses is being shown what God can do to organic flesh and blood material, living things. Is Moses grabbing a clue that God can manipulate anything on earth? No. He's probably astonished. And God says after this, if they do not believe you or pay attention to the first sign, they may believe the second. But if they do not believe these two signs or listen to you, take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground. The water you take from the river will become blood on the ground. So God is giving Moses mercy here because God is understanding that Moses has been shown once and twice, and there's still a little bit of, I'm not sure if I really believe this yet. So instead of putting this on Moses, and Moses doesn't really understand, God is saying to him, if the Israelites still don't believe, just like how you're not believing right now, then pour the water on the ground from the Nile and it will turn into blood. And this will be proof for both you and the Israelites. But God is knowing that when Moses comes to that point, Moses will be a believer. The belief that Moses has for God will be proven after all of this that leads up to the pouring of the water on the ground and it turns to blood. So, but still, knowing that Moses is not quite there yet, Moses is allowed to speak. And he says, pardon your servant. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue. This has been interpreted to be a stuttering problem. Maybe. But the Bible says that we are to be slow to anger. So when someone is slow of speech and tongue, he's saying, I don't have the words to say. I observe things and I stay silent. I can't think on the fly. I don't know what to say. What am I gonna? This is basically saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. Excuse me, sorry. When someone comes to you and says some shocking things to you, it's like throwing cold water on your face and you're just, they're in shock. That's slow to speech. That's slow to think, to know what to say. That's slow to move your tongue. I do not believe that Moses had a stuttering problem. I personally believe that Moses was fluent in Egyptian language, and he perhaps knew and stood up to his adopted father, the Pharaoh, but this new Pharaoh, he doesn't know the Pharaoh. So of course he's going to be slow to speech. He's not going to know what to say. So the Lord said to him, who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. I will help you speak, and I will teach you what to say. He's not saying, I will heal you of your stuttering problem. I will heal you of your mental defect of being slow to speech, meaning that your brain can't keep up or catch up with your tongue, that you sound like you have an impediment in some way. No. He's saying, I will teach you what to say. I will teach you my word. I will teach you the ways of how I am. Because when I teach you the ways that I am, you become I am. This is marrying ourselves to Jesus by following the ways of Jesus through following the teachings, the law of God. When you follow the law of God, you are changing your character. You're living the repentant lifestyle. You are laying down your sin of unrighteousness to adopt the love of God, which is righteousness. God is telling Moses, I will teach you what to say. Because again, going back to the Israelites, they didn't have the Torah. They didn't have the words written down. At this time, they lived the oral tradition. They taught the language of God, of Hebrew. And what was the language of God was also a culture. So God is saying, I will teach you what to say by teaching you how to live, by teaching you how to act. When you know my heart, you will know how to live. And that is what gives us discernment, my friends. When you know right from wrong, not the way the world discerns right from wrong, but when you walk in unconditional love, then you can know the heart of God because you are one with God, because you are I am. I am one with God because I am love. Love is not just a state of feeling, it's a state of being. And God is telling Moses that I will teach you what to say because I will teach you how to live. So Moses was not slow of speech in the way of stuttering. So people have used this from Moses of when God brings you to it, he'll get you through it. So people say, oh, God will use any defect that you have and get you through it. Moses was not a stutterer. Moses did not yet believe wholeheartedly. Moses was still in that place of, I am separate from my Father in heaven. Who am I? And this thing that he had to go through with God by leading the Israelites out of Pharaoh's hands was also a way to deliver himself into God's hands. It was a way for Moses also to understand who he is. And this is our experience when we are walking the trials and tribulations of life. The world is Egypt. And we have to walk in faith day by day. And sometimes God shows us. I had a man stomp on a snake about this long, and it was like this wide. Its head was from nose to neck. It was this long, like the head. From nose to neck, the head was this, about like that, many inches. It was just little baby thing. And I was walking with a Muslim, and this Muslim and I came across the snake, and I was looking at the Muslim talking, so I didn't notice the snake, but the Muslim happened to look down, saw the snake, freaked out, stomped on the snake, and I bent down to see what he stomped on, and the man lifted his foot, and the snake wriggled, and he was going to stomp on again. I said, no, don't do that. It's okay. The snake was alive. It was not squished, and this was ground that was hard like cement. So this snake should have been squished. And I've told this story many times before, so just indulge me a little bit. But God showed me a miracle. And I walked away from that miracle as leaving this Muslim. The Muslim tried to tell me that the Muslim had power over me, and that anything I said in agreement with this Muslim could take away any problems that I had. And I'm just like, no, I pray to Jesus. Jesus helps me, thank you. And I walked away knowing that, oh, how arrogant of this Muslim to think that he could take away my problems when he couldn't even kill a snake. When that snake should be dead, God showed me in that moment that God is greater than all the evil in this world. And I took that in that moment. And when evil came to me and problems came to me, I forgot that moment. I forgot that faith. I forgot that, I was just walking in the moment, and I was carrying my faith with me. And in the moment, I was identifying with God, because at that time in my life, I was just like so on fire for God. But the troubles of life caused me to fall away. And little by little, systematically, I began to separate myself and become differentiated and start, who am I? Who am I? God, if I don't belong to my mother and father, then, and I don't belong to you, then I'm nothing. Oh my gosh, and the panic set in. And God had to bring me back by using trials and tribulations to discipline me, to reestablish and reaffirm and make my trust in Him solid, so that whenever troubles come again, oh, no. I'm not going to break faith with God. I'm not breaking faith. I'm standing firm. I am who I am, and I belong to Jesus. I am one with Him. I may not have it right all the time, but I know where I'm going, and I know my heart belongs to Jesus, because I know I live the repentant lifestyle. I've done the heart work, my friends. It's evident on my YouTube channel. I share with you. I cry. I share with you the struggles and the trials of narcissistic injury and trauma. And I unpack that and unroot that. So Moses' story shares with us that yes, God calls us even when we think we're not ready. But our lives from birth until right up until this point and beyond, God is preparing us. He's preparing us so that when the enemy comes knocking at our doors, we're like, no, you're not going to move me. You're not going to move my faith. You're not going to have jurisdiction over me. You're not going to overpower me. You're not going to enslave me anymore. I'm coming out of this. And Jesus himself says, and I'm going to leave you with this. Jesus himself says, I have given you authority over snakes and scorpions, but do not lord it over them. But rejoice that your name is written in the Lamb's book of life. So what are the snakes? What are the scorpions in your life? And stand in truth. Stand in trust. Know the word of God. Hide it in your heart so that you do not sin against him. Then the enemy can't come and attack you because there's nothing to attack. Thanks for watching. Be blessed.